I think it should be pretty obvious that I'm a big fan of Mario, but my relationship with 2D Mario in particular has always been pretty fickle. It's a series that I overall deeply love, despite not really growing up with any of the classics, but it's also a series that I've had a lot of issues with over the last 15 years or so. In that time, while the 3D series largely had home run after home run, with 3D World being the one outlier in my opinion, the 2D series has largely been the opposite. It hasn't really put out a game that I would put even close to the same echelon as those original classics, and that's because in the time since the classic era, the only entirely new 2D Mario games to come out were in the New Super Mario Bros. Sub-series. I did like the original New Super Mario Bros. Game. It was a fun little reimagining of what Mario was at its roots, and while it never really broke any new ground, it didn't really have to. The last game prior to it was Yoshi's Island on the SNES. No, I don't count the Mario Advance games. So just having a new 2D Mario was interesting enough on its own, and what little things it did innovate on were a fun bonus. But in the grand scheme of things, it was just a reimagining of something that came before, and if it was going to keep my attention and really thrive as its own separate thing from its predecessors, it'd have to address its lack of creativity, really push Mario forward like Mario 3 and World did when they released. So what did we get? Well, New Super Mario Bros. Wii was more of the same but with multiplayer, and New Super Mario Bros. 2 was more of the same but with coins everywhere. Even New Super Mario Bros. U, which I was actually kind of excited for, and even influenced my decision to buy a Wii U on day one, was largely a disappointment, since the level that caught my eye the most was the Starry Night level, and if the game was that creative all the way through, it would have been amazing. But no, it was literally just that level. Nothing else in the game even attempted to do anything as artistic or unique, so it just kinda ended up being as more of the same, but with one level showing what could have been if Nintendo actually tried. And that was kind of it for the next decade. New Super Mario Bros. U was the last full 2D Mario game to come out, aside from small little diversions like New Super Luigi U or the Mario Maker games, which are fun but are no substitute for a full new Super Mario Bros. Game. So I spent the next decade hoping that Nintendo would eventually come to their senses, and in June 2023, my wish came true. Nintendo announced the next game in the Super Mario Bros. Franchise, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and I was immediately blown away. It seemed like it was going to be the true next step in the series, moving things forward for the first time in almost 30 years. And now that it's released and I've got my copy in my hands, I can't wait to see if Super Mario Bros. Wonder is the next great Super Mario game, or if it was just an illusion. Let's check it out. And just before we get started, if you like what I do, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you want to go above and beyond, you can join my Patreon. You'll get videos early, see exclusive updates on video progress, and even get some exclusive content every once in a while. Anyways, plug over. So the game starts with the gang arriving in the Flower Kingdom, having been invited there by the kingdom's leader, Prince Florian. Shortly after arriving, as the prince shows off a Wonder Flower to the team, Bowser arrives, snatches the flower, and its power activating, fuses Bowser with the Flower Kingdom's castle, creating the giant, menacing Castle Bowser. He does general Bowser things, locking up helpless Toad analogs called Poplins in their houses, and flies off. With Castle Bowser threatening to destroy the kingdom with his Wonder Power, Mario & Co., which includes Daisy this time instead of Rosalina, almost certainly because of the game's flower motif, offers to travel around the world to save the Flower Kingdom, and Prince Florian comes along to be their guide. It's a simple setup, not really any more complicated than any other Mario game, but that's completely fine. And it's really effective because of how immensely threatening Castle Bowser is. He looks so cool in this form, and I can only imagine what they'll be able to do with him later on in the game. Yeah, we'll get to that. Anyways, the first few levels are the standard tutorial-ish levels, very simple to teach you the basics of the game's movement and platforming. And that's actually what I want to talk about first, since Wonder brings a lot more to the table than you'd probably expect when it comes to the platforming mechanics. That being said, the fundamentals here should be very familiar to those who have played any of the New Super Mario Bros. Games or even Mario Maker. Mario's moveset has the standard jumps, wall jumps, ground pounds, and mid-air spins that has been a staple of the series for years, and this is a very good set of fundamentals. It feels good to run around in, and while it is similar, Wonder, I feel like the physics have been tweaked a bit here, but don't quote me on that. That being said, even though this is well-tread ground, I still have one thing that I find to be off about the platforming here. To be clear, this is a criticism I've basically had since the new Super Mario Bros. Series came out, but it still hasn't been fixed, so I will still criticize. I am not a fan of how the wall jump works in 2D Mario. Unlike most 2D platformers, where if you come in contact with a wall, you could either just press the jump button to do a wall jump, or at worst, press in the direction you want to go, Wonder forces you to press in towards a wall in order for it to register a wall jump. For the most part, this is inoffensive, I've gotten used to it over the years, but in some specific scenarios where you need to do several wall jumps very quickly, it's very easy to accidentally press away from the wall too early and die, where other games would not be so needlessly punishing. I mean, heck, Mario 64 got it right over 25 years ago. I would have hoped that with all of the other changes that Wonder ended up implementing, they'd have fixed this too, but everything else here is such a huge step forward that I'll forgive this little bit of anachronism. Speaking of steps forward, we've got a bunch of new additions that really make the game stand out from its predecessors. First are the new power-ups for Wonder, the most publicly advertised being the elephant transformation, which, believe it or not, turns the one with it into an elephant. I really don't understand this one on a visual level. Like, why didn't they just make it a suit? Every other animal power-up in the series up to this point has been one. Regardless, as a power-up, it's fine. There's a lot of uses for it. The trunk can carry water, which is used to water loads of plants throughout the game. That same trunk can be used as an attack, and in general, it just increases Mario's attack power. Enemies that would normally take 2 jumps to defeat only take 1 with the elephant power, so it definitely does have its uses, but it's not a pure upgrade like a lot of other power-ups. It has some drawbacks that make it pretty situational in my opinion. Mainly is that it's absolutely enormous, so just platforming around gets a bit more difficult due to the larger hitbox. Second up is the Bubble Flower, which on the surface seems like a pretty underwhelming power-up. You shoot bubbles and it basically defeats any small enemy immediately if it catches one. That's fine, but it's not super exciting. Even its secondary effect isn't that fun. It can activate flowers and defeat enemies through walls, which while effective, again, isn't that interesting. But when you learn of the bubble's third effect, it becomes a lot more engaging. After you shoot a bubble, it'll stick around for a bit before popping. You can actually jump off of these bubbles, which adds a ton of cool platforming possibilities, at least if you can master it. It's not as useful as, say, Cappy was in Odyssey, but a manually summonable paratroopa to bounce off of is a really fun effect, and I had a ton of fun using it when I had the chance. The third new power-up is the Drill Hat, and I love this one because it's basically just the digging moves from Mario and Luigi put into a mainline Mario game. You can dig around on the ground, reaching areas normally too tight to reach, and you can do the same for the ceiling of certain stages as well, which adds a ton of fun traversal and secret hunting. Beyond just the movement, the drill also lets you break specific blocks far faster than you normally could, and the Drill Hat even acts as protection from enemies that may attack from above. It's a super versatile and fun power-up, easily my favorite in the game. Of all the power-ups here, if any of them were to become staples in future titles, I'd want it to be this one. It just adds so many more possibilities for level design and stage layouts, it's great. That's actually all of the new power-ups, and beyond them, there really aren't many others either. Outside of the Star and Fire Flower, that's pretty much all you've got, and at least on the surface, I can see that being a bit of a disappointment for some. Where's the cape, the balloon, the helicopter, any of the other movement-focused power-ups that have been Mario staples forever? Well, yeah, they're gone, but for a very good reason. Wonder gives so many other options that those few power-ups are pretty much unnecessary. This is thanks to its most important gameplay addition, badges. These have been a part of the Mario RPGs basically forever, but this is the first time that they're properly making their way to the platformers. Badges are things you can find or buy throughout the game that augments what Mario can do, either by changing his moveset or giving him special abilities in certain situations. There's a few different types of badges here. Action badges alter the basic platforming moveset. This includes things like giving Mario the ability to do a wall climbing jump, letting him reach higher areas than he normally could, making his jump a lot floatier, basically turning him into Luigi from Super Mario Bros. 2, or a grappling vine, which gives Mario a grappling hook, letting him latch onto walls that are too far to reach by jumping. These are the badge variants that I'd use most often, but the other types are pretty fun to play with as well. Boost badges are more quality of life effects, like drawing in coins from a distance, or a radar that'll point out important collectibles. Finally, there's the expert badges, which are basically hard mode badges. Their effects are very wacky and a ton of fun to mess around with, but they each have specific downsides that make the game overall a lot more difficult when using them. For instance, there's a badge that lets Mario dash around at crazy high speeds and gives him the ability to jump jump even after running off a ledge. But you're committed to the life of Sonic. You're gonna be running around at top speed and you literally can't stop. It's a ton of fun, and I can see people doing challenge runs with some of these and having a blast, but for the average player, they're probably a lot more trouble than they're worth. But the fact that we have the option to use these sorts of crazy abilities is one of my favorite things about these badges. Not only are the effects themselves really fun in a vacuum, but changing which badge you have equipped can significantly change how you approach any given level. I love going into a stage with a new badge and just seeing what I can do with it, what secrets I can find, what challenges I can tackle in different ways. It gives the whole game so much more replayability, so much more life, knowing that even though I'm playing a stage I've already beaten before, it won't be the exact same, and that's a feeling I've never really had with any Mario game before. My favorite badge, however, is easily the Cap Parachute badge, which is coincidentally the first one you get, but it's not for the reasons you think. See, I did a lot of speedruns in Metroid Dread, and one of the things that speedrunners use is the Morph Ball wall jump. This detour makes sense, I promise. This trick lets Samus gain consistent height up single walls, which is something that is normally impossible thanks to the game specifically being built to not allow it. The Cap Parachute badge does the same thing here. By doing a wall jump and quickly pulling out the cap, it gives Mario just enough horizontal momentum and vertical stall that you can reach the wall again higher up than you were before. Do that over and over and you've got an infinite single wall jump, which can help out in basically every stage. Add that to the already useful ability it was intended to have, and you've got a kind of Swiss Army knife of a badge that makes getting basically anywhere possible whenever you want. While I guess you could say that this does make some other badges a little bit obsolete, and you wouldn't be entirely wrong, I just love being able to figure this stuff out, just using the tools the game has in fun and unique ways, and the Cap Parachute lets me do that. But I do have one issue with badges. Because all of these badges can be used at any time and in any stage, most stages can't really be built with all of them in mind at all times, which leads to some stages that very rarely take advantage of what these badges can do. Now there are a few. Almost every action and expert badge have specific challenge courses designed specifically for them, and they are genuinely some of my favorite stages, but they are very short and there's only 2 for each badge. I wish they could have put more in here. Even just a third stage for every badge as a super hard challenge would have made them feel more complete, but as it is, it's just a little bit underwhelming. But regardless of my few issues, I think that overall, in terms of its fundamentals, Wonder is easily my favorite 2D Mario game to play. It takes the already solid foundations built over the last several decades, sprinkles in some fun new power-ups, and really solidifies everything with the amazing addition of badges that makes Wonder an absolute blast just to move around in. But that's not all that Wonder adds in. Even moving around the worlds is a lot more fun than it used to be, and that brings me directly into the game's structure. So at the very start, it may seem like every other Mario game. You're sent to the world map and you only have one thing you can do: move directly to the next level. After the third level though, you get brought to the bulk of World 1, and this is where things change for the better. See, Super Mario 3D World introduced a neat feature in the overworld that let you travel off the dotted line and explore around those worlds. This was a cool little feature, but outside of finding a few secrets here and there, it didn't really offer much in terms of substance. You still had to unlock each level in order and had very little choice in how you progressed. Wonder makes one small change to this which vastly improves the overall experience. In any of these areas where you can explore, every main stage is open and available right away, giving you a choice in where you want to go first and which stages you want to tackle. This seems like a small change, and it is, but just giving me the ability to choose which stages I want to take on and which I want to leave for later is huge. Now this isn't always the case. Each world has some sections where you are limited, like older Mario games. Honestly though, that's fine, as the sections that are more linear are also much more well considered. In earlier worlds, it's typically the bare minimum for the critical path locked this way, or hidden paths towards secrets. And in later worlds, while they may be locked to the dotted line more often, the worlds themselves are so much more intricately built and complex that you aren't just on a railroad to the castle level. There are even some specific roadblocks that you'll have to clear in order to get to certain parts of these worlds. You'll come across a Poplin who's near one, and it'll say something along the lines of,
"Oh no, I'm so tired. If only I had some money, then I'd be less tired."
As ridiculous as these are, I don't really see the point in them existing at all. You use a currency called flower coins in order to clear these blockades, but no matter where I was in the game, these were all so cheap that it was barely a blip in my bank account to pay them off. The most these things cost was like 50 coins, and even buying everything everything in every store and maxing out my lives, I was still much more likely to be topping out at the money cap than even being close to not being able to afford one. I think these blockades are a fun idea, but they need to be actually kind of difficult to get past, at least in the later worlds. As they are, they're kind of just pointless. Anyways, I really like how the game is structured to keep you invested in playing new levels all the time. See, the game's main collectibles are Wonder Seeds, and we'll get more into how to get them in a bit, but Wonder does something really cool with them. There are several different colors of Wonder Seed for each respective area, meaning that collection for World 1 doesn't affect anything in World 2, and so on. I really like this since it encourages engaging with each new level in every world, as you can't just gather a ton of early game collectibles and ignore a ton of the late game content, like some other games. Speaking of that content, a Mario game wouldn't be a Mario game without courses, and its level design is another aspect that I think it absolutely excels in. While yeah, a lot of these stages do follow the general Mario design philosophy, that's not really a bad thing, as Mario level design has typically always been good, and moreover, they do a great job of making each stage here feel unique. I never went into a stage wondering if I'd already done this one, you know? This sort of level variety is something that I really need in any 2D platformer, and Wonder pulls it off in spades. I was always excited to see what new thing it'd throw my way, what new enemies it'd introduce, what way each new power-up would interact with the environment. It consistently surprised with its level layouts, and that's just the basic stuff. That being said, some of the smaller break time stages ended up being complete duds for me, having this sort of small gimmick that doesn't really add anything and are over in single-digit seconds. And there are a few stages that are absolutely horrible in single player, specifically the search party stages, which are big scavenger hunts for 5 coins that will spawn the end of level Wonder Seed after finding them all. The problem is that they contain specific puzzles that are only solvable by certain characters. See, throughout the game there are these blocks that only appear when a particular character is nearby. Most of the time these are just nice little bonuses that reward you for picking that character, and that's really neat. But in these search party levels, it gets to be super tedious because some of these coins are hidden via these blocks, so if you want to find them, you have to scour every bit of each one with every character. And just to make things worse, duplicate characters like the differently colored Toads and Yoshis all count as different characters. It's a much easier task to do in a team of 3 or 4, but when you're on your own, man, it's not a great time. Anyways, within standard levels are a bunch of standard collectibles, like the special 10 count flower coins that are placed in precarious positions that require planning and precision to procure. What I like more about these than any other unique level coins is that they are the game's main currency. That really helped make me want to go out and search for them, since they weren't just a thing I had to get because the game said so. I was also a lot more likely to go for full completion in a level, including all 3 flower coins and the top of the flagpole, because the game's difficulty curve was so smooth. It was a really good ramp from the start of the game to the final endgame challenges, and while I feel like it did lean towards the easier side of things, that's not necessarily a bad thing, and the ease is almost certainly due to the badges and how many more options the game gives you to tackle any given challenge. I'm not exactly sure how I feel about the level star ratings though. They can be an alright signifier of challenge, but they did feel fairly arbitrary and not 100% representative of any given level's actual challenge, especially the further I got into the game. Overall, they're pretty harmless though, and a decent addition for those who want an idea as to what they're getting into before starting a level. Another thing I really enjoyed about the design philosophy here is that it really encourages exploration and taking your time a lot more than any other Mario game, to the point that the game actually removed the individual level time limit. I was so much more likely to just stick around in a level, going back and forth through them combing for secrets, because I knew that no matter how much time I spent in any one level, how long I took exploring, the game was never going to punish me for that. It was never going to kill me because I got too curious and wanted to see everything that the level wanted to show off, and that curiosity was almost always rewarded with either secret exits to new levels, hidden flower coins, or other small collectibles. But of course, there's one other thing that's super important within these levels, to the point that the game was named after them: the Wonder Flowers. Yeah, if a single Wonder Flower was able to turn Bowser from a simple turret into a giant living castle, then I'd bet that encountering them throughout the world would be able to do some really wondrous things as well. There's one in every main stage that you have to find. Completing their effects grants a Wonder Seed, and yeah, they really are amazing. Easily the game's most defining aspect, and something that, honestly, if they don't return in every game from now on in some way, will make future games feel dull in comparison. I'm not going to spoil every single effect that these have, because there's a lot of really cool ones that you just need to see, but they range from fairly simple ideas like taking the Hoppo enemy and asking, but what if more? To more complex things like turning Mario 90 degrees and making the game a top-down adventure game for a few minutes. The game was genuinely making me think, oh, I wonder what's coming next, in every stage, and it almost never disappointed. Sure, they do reuse a few of these effects, but when they do, they're always in new and interesting contexts that make them completely different experiences from their earlier iterations. Some of them even go so far as to entirely change how a level plays out, and this is great because not only are these levels already a blast to replay thanks to the badges, but you can also change what version of the levels you want to play depending on whether or not you choose to grab a Wonder Seed. They really are a game changer and are probably my absolute favorite part of the game, even beyond badges. These levels end up feeling less like Mario levels and more akin to something you'd find in Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, and that is immensely high praise. And beyond just being really cool and interesting mechanically, they tend to look incredible too. Like, an early level has a silhouette visual style, which is already a big plus in my eyes, but when the Wonder Seed is activated, it goes crazy. Mario and the enemies all stretch out and become really tall, and not only them, but the background does too. Whenever Mario crouches, all of the trees in the background do as well, and it's just so cool to look at. Again, this is a very early example, and later levels do even more than that, but you can probably already imagine what sort of crazy things happen later on. Even ignoring the Wonder Flowers, the game's visual design and style is a huge step up from everything else we've seen in the Mario series so far, at least the 2D one. I know it's a huge cliche to say this about a Mario game, but everything here is just so charming. From Mario's slight redesign, focusing more heavily on more cartoony expressions and movements, to the enemies which now feel a lot more alive than they ever used to. New Super Mario Bros. Did start this, making the enemies dance along to the boss in the music, but they were static as ever beyond that. Enemies here will react to things you do to them. If they see Mario approaching, they'll get angry. If you attack them or throw an item near them, they'll freak out, that sort of thing. It's another small detail, but it does a ton to make the game feel much more vibrant and alive. Even the poplins that you meet within levels and around the world are pretty great. I really love that if you end a level as an elephant with water in your trunk, you can water them and their heads will bloom. That's really cute. Everything just looks so good. The whole game was crafted with so much care. Every world, every stage, every bit of background art. It's all so crisp, so colorful, so bursting with artistry that it's hard to imagine that it's in the same series that made New Super Mario Bros. And just the style that the Wonder Flowers is able to facilitate is so cool. I love the black and green outlines that Bowser's clouds have. I love the weird effects that Wonder Flowers found in stages put on everything. It's just a feast for the eyes all the time. Even the worlds are fun and creative. Like, just look at Shining Falls' art style, the isometric design to the environments, the gold accented color scheme. I wish every Mario game looked as good as this all the time. I also actually really love the talking flowers that live in the Flower Kingdom. Honestly, when I first saw the trailer, I was skeptical towards them and I was pretty sure that they'd get super annoying super fast, but you know what? I grew to like them pretty quickly. From their little quips in precarious situations, to their words of encouragement when you're doing well, to their reactions to being under the influence of the Wonder Flowers, they're really a joy and I never once considered turning them off when I was playing. But of course, if you aren't like me and you want a more pure experience without the color commentary, you can silence them. On that note, the sound overall is quite a bit more ambitious than your typical Mario game as well. Sound effects and design that have remained fairly static for years have all been changed, and it all sounds great. And I guess we should probably bring up the elephant Mario in the room now. Charles Martinet, the voice of Parthenax in Skyrim, has retired from voice acting. This actually does pose a bit of a problem for the Mario series because he was also the voice of Waluigi, and I guess Mario and Luigi too. So yeah, Mario, Luigi, and any other character that Martinet voiced needed a new actor, and Nintendo decided on Kevin Afghani to take up the mantle. Honestly, I think he did an awesome job. Like, you can definitely tell that it's not Martinet doing the voices, but Afghani's performances are close enough approximations that they still feel like they are Mario and Luigi. Interestingly though, the vast majority of the voice cast was replaced in Wonder, with only Peach's voice actor, Samantha Kelly, reprising her role. I imagine that this is largely because of the Princess Peach Showtime game that's coming out soon. I would have bet that if Peach wasn't getting her own game, Wonder would have been a clean wipe and fresh start with an entirely new voice cast. Either way, everyone does a good job here, and I think that a game as weird and wacky as Wonder is the best time to introduce new voices. They don't sound as out of place in such an off-kilter world as they would if this was New Super Mario Bros. 3. In terms of the music, it's fine. A lot of the time it's kinda just there, but when it's good, it's really good. I'm a big fan of the airship theme remix. It's really intense and fits those levels really well. I'm also a sucker for a good ice theme. And Wonders really gets that wintry spirit across. Also, the game has some unique mixes for these themes, specifically for when you're an elephant. It's basically the same thing, but with more horns, because, you know, elephant. Now, before we go ending this off, I wanted to go over a few other odds and ends, like the multiplayer and online stuff, since this game actually has that. The local multiplayer is pretty good. It's thankfully, or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, not nearly as chaotic as it was in the new Super Mario Bros. Games. No tossing your friends off of cliffs or bouncing off their heads so they fall into an enemy anymore. You can still grief your friends with items and things like that, but it's designed to be a bit more co-op friendly. Nintendo has also entirely replaced the bubble mechanic from those games, now showing without a doubt that you die when you are killed, becoming a ghost. In this ghost form, it's basically the same thing as bubbling, except you have a timer that slowly ticks down, and if it reaches 0 before your friend helps you out, you lose a life. The camera kinda sucks in multiplayer though. It was never great, but it's very easy to get left behind, and the player that the camera focuses on can shift seemingly at random, which can be a bit jarring when you're in the middle of a stage. As for the online play, well, it's interesting to say the least. Once you connect to the internet, you'll start to see ghosts of other players that are playing the same stages as you, with the added bonus that you can help them out if they're having trouble by either giving them items or reviving them after they perish. The reviving is done either by coming in contact with them while they float around as ghosts, or with these standees that you can buy from the Poplin shops. The standees can be placed pretty much anywhere throughout a level, and if someone dies there, they can touch the standee and be brought back to life. You can also see how many people they've helped when you touch their standee, as well as the number above their heads in game, which is pretty cool. Now, if you want to directly play with your friends, you can actually do that by creating a friend room, which lets people connect directly together to play levels together or participate in friend races. This is cool and I'm happy to see it, but honestly, the ghost feature is by far my favorite thing here. It's a ton of fun just playing through levels, leaving standees to help people out or revive someone who's having trouble while playing. It gives a great feeling of cooperation, which is usually the opposite of what you experience when playing Mario multiplayer. So at this point, I think we're going to start heading towards the end here and covering the final stretch and boss. Now, if you don't want to be spoiled on any of that, there's going to be a timestamp somewhere around here. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's go. So yeah, the goal is to beat Bowser, who's got himself protected by these Cloud Piranha Plants, 6 in total. Obviously, Mario is going to need to go through the 6 different worlds and collect a big MacGuffin to remove these clouds so he can go fight Bowser. As we collect more of these big Wonder Seeds and clear out those clouds, Bowser keeps teasing this big or huge or amazing wonder that he's got planned, and we can't let that happen. But that's like literally all he does. He just sits in the center of the kingdom and occasionally quips at Mario about his progress. I kind of feel like they wasted the Castle Bowser design here. Yeah, he looks really threatening and cool as this giant mobile living castle, but he doesn't do anything throughout the entire game, so nothing really comes from that threat. I think it would have been really cool if the castle itself was the one that summoned the airship levels instead of Kamek. Just this colossal shadow looming over any given kingdom, resulting in one of Bowser's minions attacking you. It would have at least made Bowser's power and threat more apparent. Anyways, after clearing the last Piranha Plant, we head into Castle Bowser to take him on and stop him from doing his amazing wonder. Oh, before doing the final boss here, I wanted to talk about the game's other bosses, or boss, since there's really only one. Yeah, that really sucks. Mario games aren't exactly known for their amazing boss battles, but it's really disappointing that outside of Bowser, the only boss in the game is just various fights against Bowser Jr. He does get a cool redesign when he's consumed by Wonder Power, and to be fair, his fights do get more interesting as they include a bunch bunch of different wonder effects, but it's almost never anything entirely unique or exciting. Just the standard, watch the boss do a thing for a few seconds, then jump on its head, repeat twice. Even the airship levels, which used to have a mini-boss of some kind, is really nothing to write home about. It's just a very short bit where you have to make your way through some obstacles to step on a button once. As much as I love this game, the bosses are a really big pain point, and unfortunately, I kind of think this continues into the final fight with Bowser. Now, to be completely fair here, I do love the look of Bowser in this fight, and the general theming of the fight overall. It's all framed like a rave, with pyrotechnics, a light show, and a really sick theme. Beyond that, the fight is rhythm-based, where if you jump on the downbeat, it'll be powered up, letting you do damage to Bowser. This is really cool, and made the fight a lot of fun, at least conceptually. My problem is that everything else feels like it's very 1996, you know what I mean? Oh, you need to jump into Bowser's hands to make his head vulnerable, then jump into his head to damage him. Just iterate on that a few times and you've got a boss fight. They could have done a lot more with this, since it's got strong DJ Octavio vibes, but on a mechanical level, it just kind of fell flat. But eventually, we press the final button and defeat Bowser at last. He explodes and everyone makes it back to the kingdom safe and sound. The Poplins thank the crew for their help, and the game ends. And as the credits roll, the game offers one final bit of fun, as it has a credits minigame where you need to touch as many names as the credits as you can, and as someone who has played way too much Super Smash Bros. Melee, I absolutely adore this. And that was Super Mario Bros. Wonder. I adore this game. This is pretty much exactly what I wanted out of a new Mario game. A game that has that awesome core experience with a ton of customization and player expression, in a world just bursting at the seams with creativity and excitement. Now, I definitely wouldn't say that it's a perfect platforming experience. The bosses are terrible, and I don't think Nintendo's done quite enough to polish up the platforming mechanics to make them as smooth as they could be. But overall, that really doesn't matter too much, since Wonder is just a joy to play from start to finish. I'm not sure I'd really say it's my favorite platformer or anything. It'd be really hard to top Tropical Freeze, but I would say that it is by far my favorite 2D Mario game in the last 20 years, and if Nintendo continues this direction in the future, I would be more than pleased. It's honestly amazing that the Switch can be in its 7th year, and Nintendo can still be putting out such landmark titles like Wonder. It really makes me excited for the future. But Nintendo is at best impossible to pin down, so who knows if this is going to be the standard for things going forward, or if this was just a detour before they head back to the tried and true for the next 15 years. Either way, this game, Super Mario Wonder, was amazing, and one that I'm going to be going back to frequently from now on. Thank you all so much for watching. And just before we end the video here, I want to thank my amazing patrons, R.A. Miller, Anon42, and Louis G. You're the best. Thank you all so much.